Hello, everybody. I'm Dan Winter, and I'm with Russ here. Go ahead, Russ.
Fractal University, thank you for being tribe. I love you all. And with our headmaster, Dan Winter, we are going to be talking about the Sufi sequences and the movements that we need to do to accomplish bliss.
Yeah, we decided on a theme today. It's called Sufi physics: why does everyone think that electric fields themselves can't be spiritual or even immortal? Question mark. Or how does an electric field become immortal and spiritual? What's the difference? And Russell is suggested also that we talk more about the sequence of movements, the sequence of symmetries, which lead to the implosion, which is bliss. For example, the difference between the electric magnetic flow on the surface of a torus. In fact, maybe, Russ, why don't we even start there? So,
So
here's,
what I feel,
go ahead,
yeah.
go ahead. Yeah.
So what I feel is that I wish everybody to understand that when you have a toroidal field around you, it's moving, the plasma donor right there, right? There is a magnetic pulse, which is your body. There is a electric pulse, that is your mind. And so when that toroidal field goes, and what Dan means by going magnetic to electric, that means that through your mind or through your feet, those are the electrical points. Those are the points of electricity that spark your heart, that give you love. You intake the spark of love through these points, right?
Mhm.
You have your first mind, you have your second mind, you have the yin and the yang. This is your generator right here, right here. Your perineum and your belly button. This is one generation. Then through your feet and through your mind. And this is what we translate, where when we talk about bliss or achieving this bliss only happens when you can achieve a shareable thought. Tap into the array. The array only moves on a color sequence, a spectrum of light, ladder of lights, what you
This is
feel.
It is a sequence. That's the point. There is a sequence to this event. And for example, when we teach about and measure the biophysics of Kundalini, which moves through your solar plexus and then up and implodes in your brain, we're very clear about the sequences there. We measured what's called uh, the sacrocranial pulse frequencies. They're called the tidal low frequencies in the spine liquid pump. And when the low frequencies in the spine liquid pump, for example, the zero point 0.1 hertz 10-second Mayer wave, which is LF, called LF component of heart rate variability. That's the core pump, that 10-second breath, for example, and that centers and aligns and is in phase with pure charge implosion, Planck fire. And that cascade then moves up, and that implosion eventually, literally, it's a snake being charmed. It's the reptilian brainstem. And in the Sanchidan, it's the mouth of the snake brain called amygdala, which dumps that bliss liquid, the spine liquid pump, into the high brain, and there's that implosion, the ventricle horns, and then you feel the top of your head like a lightning bolt. And it does start with the base of the spine, which needs grounding and is fed, if you're healthy, with literally the sexual juices, which feed that pump. And if you've generated the coherent ultraviolet, which is the physics of the sex juices, and then that can be pumped up the spine liquid pump without perversion, which is not easy. But all of that implosive process then is in a sequence linking the glands from the solar plexus, eventually the top of the head, and that then implodes compressively. It feels like a lightning bolt. Introduction to Physics of Kundalini 101, goldenmean.info/Kundalini, the documentaries and the biophysics and the harmonics as well. That conversation is fairly clear. Now, and Russ started out with something relatively basic, which is useful. Today's conversation, which I wanted to have in part, which was, how do electric fields become not stupid? I mean, how do electric fields become self-aware? How do electric fields become spiritual? How do electric fields become immortal? Because your average, third grader on this planet thinks that the electric field that's coming out of the little outlet in the wall is a dumb electric field. And so they generalize, think, well, electric fields by definition must be dumb, right? But there's a little problem with that idea, because everything in physics is made of electric field. Everything. That's called the unified field. And everything else that thinks that something is separate from electric fields, that's called schizophrenia. For example, physicists who believe that gravity is made of something other than an electric field, we suggest they be hospitalized for schizophrenia, because this is literally, and that it can be fatal. Let me give you an example of how that becomes fatal. So you take your typical religious fundamentalists who think that God is going to make them immortal, so they don't have to take care of their body, and they can eat junk food, and they can sleep in electrosmog, because they think God is going to make me immortal, so I don't need electric fields. That kind of schizophrenia is fatal, because now these people ended up eating junk food, sleeping in electric smog, and their body gets, and it is literally fatal to have that kind of electric field. So those people should be hospitalized. So how do we convince them that electric fields can get spiritual and immortal, since everything is an electric field? And then underlying Russ's question here, speaking of unifying the field, the difference basically an electric field is a torus. Everything in the universe is made of torus donuts of electric field, and you nest them, you get string theory vortex wormholes. And if you nest the electric fields exactly like a nest of platonic solids, you get the atomic table, literally. Remember this? So that was, speaking of which, so we had said that in this video, we were going to do a short précis review of two of our most popular recent films, one of which was a review critique of Terrence Howard's interview with Joe Rogan. And the short summary there was that Terrence Howard was in fact intuitively onto something potentially useful, because he's saying how you nest soap bubbles to make platonic solids creates a new atomic table. And, he didn't get the details right, but that intuition was useful. And that was that film. We said, look, the SPDF suborbitals, which is the whole atomic table, the S suborbital is only a donut. That's what it is. And the pi suborbital is tetracube. Very simple. And the D and F suborbitals, you have 2, 6, 10, 14 electrons. 10, 14 is D and F suborbitals. Is 5, 7 vortex pairs, namely dodecaecosa. So you take the donut and then tetracube, pi suborbital, and the D and F suborbital, and you nest interdigitate them. And literally, that is the atomic table. And that's true of the electron shells and the nucleus. So the atomic table, your chemistry teacher cheated you badly by not showing you that the atomic table is simply, whether it's neutrons, the nucleus, or the electrons. In both cases, the atomic table is only a way of nesting the platonic solids. That's all it is. And of course, then the obvious question, the elephant in the room is, why is the whole atomic table only a nest of platonic solids? And the answer is quite simple, is that if you take tetracube and embed it here in dodecaecosa, and then the dodecaecosa, the 3D fractal nest called Star Mother Kit, what that creates is golden ratio and perfected charge collapse. And that implosive charge collapse is the cause of gravity and all centripetal forces, and why Kepler says the planetary orbitals are this. He's right, because if you make charge collapse, things hang together, become negentropic, centripetal. So that was an example of platonic solids and charge collapse. Go ahead, Russ. Did you want to say something?
Yeah. I definitely want to tap into it. It's the same as Tony Rodriguez said, or what I'm trying to basically, this level. You think in molecules, you think in atoms. You have pure power to translate that and integrate that into many minds and give that understanding of unpacking of how they will feel this energy. That molecule right there, the mother right there, what you are showing is what they are stepping on. So it's in every atom of every step they take. When we
Charge
talk about
collapse, implosion.
when we talk about charge collapse and implosion, what does that feel like? What
Yeah.
are they? It's just like when you said about
Feels
rock
like
and roll.
bliss. Feels like Kundalini.
It feels like euphoria.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
feels like
It does.
euphoria. So when they take any type of drug or any type of smoke of weed, ecstasy, mushroom, whatever they take, there is a process, a natural process that is happening within the body that needs to be focused and known that you do not need something for this. You can do this by yourself.
Yeah.
If you take it, if you have taken it, do what you need to do. There's no right way of living. There
And,
is movement and a
and,
process.
and you could say that there are some very specific electrical conditions we now know which enable charge to collapse. A stone circle in a sacred forest, a sacred site where magnetic earth lines cross in the center of a labyrinth at sunrise, sunset. All these are places where charge collapse, called sacred space, where it is easier to have bliss. And versus, on the other hand, if you live in a metal building full of electrosmog and dead air, sorry, the charge ain't collapsing and you do not get access to, sorry, messy, messy. So it's a very, very simple thing. What you're seeking when Castaneda said place of power, obviously, you need to find your place of power in the room. You're seeking the place where charge is able to collapse, which acoustically is where you can make an echo, bringing
But
us.
people don't feel the people when they walk into a room. There's phrase in the West. It says everybody turns their heads when I walk into a room. They talk about this energy, but they don't know how to connect it. So when you walk into a room where you feel most comfortable, is that charge of collapse. That is that place. It
Presence,
has to be connected to a knowledge, to an emotion,
a
which
presence.
people are working on emotion because their minds are well in this timeline right now is a little bit scrambled, right?
And
So
we wanted
we're
to include our Sufi stories, which, and this is a perfect place. So, in Meetings with Remarkable Men, Sufis, Gurdjieffs, uh, you know, how they assign who is the saint is who can make an echo. And if you go into a room and you're looking for the sacred place, a good place to start, temple, wherever it is the place where there is an echo. And in fact, not only is that acoustic array of a perfect echo the beginning of immortality, I mean sustainability in field effects, but it's a very useful metaphor piezoelectrically to where the electric field also is making a perfect echo. And a perfect echo in an electric field is called immortality. Hello. So, which is simply implosive sustainability, basically. So, but there was one thing so we're gonna get our Sufi stories in here, but
yeah.
there's one thing one thing basic about Russ's original question today. The difference between the electric and magnetic vector on the torus of flux, which is the shape of all electric fields, the difference between the electric and magnetic vector is simply a right turn. So the magnetic vector, implosive, and the electric vector is the rotation. So you measure the electric versus the magnetic component with perpendicular transducers, essentially, which is to say, an implosive right angle? Is that an L or a phase shift? The point is that if you do implode and make the L as an Elohim or phase shift, you could use the metaphor of the difference between electric and magnetic flux on the same torus. It's simply how you measure whether the flux is going repeatedly inward or around, the electric being
And
pressure.
what would you call that? What would you call so I understand with my emotions, my intuition. I can hear your words. I can feel them. My filter takes them in, and I can understand because I've done these movements, right? For somebody that hasn't done these movements, what would you call a magnetic to electric?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. When you're feeling, if you're in your body, let me give you an example. So we were having this fabulous conference on spiritual everything in near Geneva. And then we had four speakers in the front of the room, and all four speakers came to the front of the room and plugged in the little transformer to power their laptop. And every
Mhm.
single, especially lady in that room, they commented, they noticed, they were aware, they immediately got profound nausea and lost all digestion. So here
Right. Right.
there's these speakers, they're going to be teaching on spiritual everything. And the first thing they walk in the room to teach that room is plug in their little power transformers and destroy everything spiritual about the whole damn room. or, or the other
So
thing
we're
I
talking
like,
about routers. We're talking about
not just
adapters. Adapters. A
it could
router
be
and there's
it
an
could be
adapter.
the router could do it, but actually just simply the little 9-volt transformer that you use to power your laptop. You plug in about 4 of them babies, and I guarantee that every single, especially lady in that room, is going to have nausea and stop digestion because that prevented implosion. Let me give you another example. So we were doing these conscious life expos all around Australia. And we did Perth and Sydney and Melbourne, and this was and they have these conscious life expos all over California. And the thing that's a scream about conscious life expos, we did some in Prague too, is you get there and you arrive, and this is going to be, we're going to teach spirituality. Ain't it cool? And where do you arrive? You arrive in the center of this goddamn metal electrosmog dead air hotel. And every single booth has a huge amount of disgusting electrosmog. And every single human being who spends more than 20 minutes in that space is very sick, basically. So there we were doing, we're teaching our Conscious Life Expo, except we just created the most deadly electric field in the universe in which to teach spirituality. Was this stupid or what? If we had met in a sacred circle of old trees, maybe. So did these people know what's spiritual about electric fields? No, they didn't have a clue. So, so the point is that it isn't whether it's electric or magnetic. The electric or magnetic is just the component of flux or charge, whether it's traversing centripetally or circumferentially. That's the difference between electric and magnetic. You could say one is pressure and one is flow, but actually it isn't quite that. Pressure is named voltage and flow rate is named amperage. The hydrodynamics is very specific. So voltage and amperage is only a name for pressure versus flow rate and nothing else. That's what voltage and amperage are in the electric field. But the idea of electric versus magnetic describes the perpendicularities of rotation on the torus. Now, where that gets interesting is when those perpendicularities do what's called optimized translation of vorticities, ride the spiral down the torus to the point of implosion called charge collapse at the center. That's when the electric field can get smart, because at the center of that implosion, there's a connection to an array called a longitudinal array, because the result of that compression implosion to that center has converted the transverse electromagnetic implosively at the center of that vortex donut, where the pine cone's kiss noses, into the compression nodes of an array, which looks like this, a longitudinal node called sacred space. And so the radio into the array happens after the implosive compression, where the right angle vectors
So
translate.
what is it? What is it with that? What is it with what if we turn the collapse? If I could explain it, I would
Implode
translate
into
that.
the array. Yeah.
When I walk up, when I see somebody I like, or the love of my life, I see her across the room. That is a spark. The magnetism comes to the point, and I will embrace her. And then every time I order her a drink, or I woo her in any way I show fit, that is a spark. And then it's all magnetism. Same thing in business. In business, when I think of a contract deal, I think of how we're going to close it. The middle part does not involve, it doesn't matter to me. That's the magnetism part. The spark is the key, the energy. So that I want people to really look at the toroidal field and kind of understand their
Nice.
imagination, the brashit, the spark, the generator
You could
of
say
life.
You could say the baraka even. Well, Russ, I think in that case, when you are thinking of magnetic, you're thinking of the medium of attraction. And that's good. And the medium of attraction, remember, is the centripetal force. So now Russ has just given us the perfect opportunity for our next Sufi story.
Our Sufi stories. Let's do
Okay,
it.
our next Sufi story is the ancient Sufi koan. Explaining Sufi koans is risky because you can really screw up. These things are profound. But the ancient Sufi koan goes like this: only love bends the light, therefore only love creates. So there is Russ, and he's feeling the love at a distance from this magic lady. Has he created centripetal force? I mean, attraction? Is that magnetic or electric? Well, it's really both. But what is it about the love that creates the attraction? Well, if you're a physicist and your job is to explain ancient Sufi koans, I don't know if that's a good paying job. I couldn't tell you. But if your job is to explain ancient Sufi koans, which I tend to do sometimes, how would a physicist explain only love bends the light, therefore only love creates? Where's the physics? Well, actually, the physics is very profound. So first, here's the first notion is that what's called the light is essentially the unified field of compressible media, sometimes called charge or ether, which literally behaves like a superfluid named charge. And when that charge rotates, it creates an electric field. And the nature of the rotation, when the charge is not rotating, there is no mass. Because when charge rotates, it stores inertia, the only name and definition for mass. And when that charge rotates, it creates the only name and definition for time, which is rate of rotation. There is no other definition for time. Don't let them give you any crap.
What that means, what that means is if you have a still point where you have a girl or some type of love that's stepped away and you don't have anything to do with it anymore. That's a still point, but you still already generated that love. You already had the love in the hands.
You felt for
So
her. You felt for her.
yeah, and if it's a side, then it's a side. But you still already created that mass, and you can implode that, but sometimes you have to just let it go.
But and which agrees with this notion, which is that whatever started that charge on the way toward rotation. Remember, charge in a line is energy, is not rotating, so it doesn't have mass or doesn't have a period of spin, so it doesn't have time. So you didn't get mass or time or a still point until after the charge learned to rotate, actually, which if you take the turns of mind on the surface of a torus and you look the shadow of the Hebrew letters of the 7 turns from the way inside to the outside, the 7 shadows are Sefer Bereshit, the first word of Genesis, which is the sequence of turns of mind to teach you to turn inside out on the surface of a torus, literally to bend the light, and therefore the origin of creation, transliterated as the origin of all thingness, is the ability to turn inside out. So if you didn't bend the light, you didn't create mass or time or embedding or still point or attraction. So first step, bend the light. And why do we say only love bends the light? Well, remember, long wave phi ratio creates embed ability, which is not a Playboy magazine, interestingly. No, it is. Embeddability is literally the ability of a small electric field to embed in a larger electric field. And that embed ability, sometimes named compassion, where your heart turns inside out recursively. And then Russ felt his lover arrive on the other side of the room and felt attraction, which is literally, I feel you inside me as if you were outside me, as if you were inside me. In fact, I would turn myself inside out for you, darling. I mean, so,
Yeah.
so when the Sufi said only love bends the light, they literally said only by embedding into the vorticity of the array, by feeling compassion, literally, electrically, precisely how a shaman starts steering a tornado. You see the bioplasmic streamers come from the belly of the shaman. He feels the pain of the tornado called eating the hoocha. And then the tornado falls in love with the shaman, and the shaman's bioplasmic streamers embed in that tornado and become the centripetal force, which is the tornado. And now the shaman is steering that tornado. And that process, then the tornado needs to be steered away from ugly metal buildings, which will kill a tornado. So the tornado needs to kill ugly metal buildings and will never kill a sacred stone circle because that feels like part of its body. So the process of steering a tornado, and remember, physics is made of nothing but tornadoes. so the process of steering that tornado started with only love, Ben. I mean, imploding. So you're getting the flavor here now that if we take the example of the moment the ball lightning started to respond, as is well known, so nicely to telepathy, what was the moment when the ball lightning, which we have to assume is a Taurus, responded so well to telepathy? Was the moment suddenly, it's called popping the quiff. The lightning going in a line became lightning going in a circle. It became a torus. It's turning inside out. It's imploding. And at the center of the imploding donut of ball lightning, there's a connection to the array, access to telepathy. And suddenly that electric field became intelligent, potentially immortal, because it turned inside out. Love bent the light.
These are the most sacred words that could be spoken even in a video. How do we translate this in a simple form for them to the ball of lightning?
Yeah.
For example, I had a situation where I watched the movie Chronicle. I think I watched it like 3 or 4 times before that. But at one moment I was sitting there and there was a phrase that said that this is a muscle and we're pumping the muscle, and the more we use it, the stronger we get. Mm-hmm. At that moment, I thought to myself, yo, I'm working out all the time. I'm having all these experiences, but I need to use this. I need to flex my perineum. I need to feel that inertia in my neck. I know this. So why am I not doing it? Mm-hmm. And at that moment, my third eye, the pineal just secreted. And so I closed my eyes and I could see like almost a sun in front of my face. It was a sun in front of my face. And I opened my eyes and I could see the sun was over here. It was shining that way. So I had, it was all, there was no sun coming in through the windows. But I closed my eyes and I could see a sun. I could see the heat. I could feel it through each one of my fingers. I could feel the pulse. And that's what I want people to achieve.
Yes.
To
light the fire, ignite the fire of the pineal, for example, which is the implosion of the phonons known for Kundalini. And it is literally vestigial eye tissue. It is the inner light. Absolutely. It's a beautiful metaphor and totally appropriate. So what we're saying here then is that access to bliss process comes when you learn more and more about the physics of successful compression, which has everything to do with thinking a shareable thought and everything to do with moving into a space, sacred space, where compression is possible away from the crap. And all the things that enable your body to implode. And actually, this leads us to the second little thing we said we were going to do here. By the way, I want to acknowledge here Russ's personal experience of bliss process. He's had these bliss experiences for so many years, and his yearning to share that with you is a beautiful thing. And and I had my Kundalini experiences, and Russ has had these amazing experiences. So we felt this meltdown juicy fire inside how many billion times, and we know that literally this is the name for the principle of being a shareable wave. In fact, shareability is exactly what we achieve when you get to that implosion. So obviously, if we ain't able to share this, we're in trouble. So, and our yearning to share, this is simply what we're saying is, when we can embed into this larger and larger array, call it higher consciousness, call it the next dimension. But what we're saying here is that some very exact, specific electrical engineering requirements, like If you ate French fries, probably not. If you ate garlic, no, it switched off. Or if you're living in electrosmog, if you're thinking unshareable thoughts all day, no, it ain't gonna work. So it's a very practical thing, this achieving of this implosion, which does immortalize and makes. So the point is that electric fields are not by definition dumb and immortal and mortal. No, we made the electric fields dumb and mortal by preventing perfected distribution. Hey, Ave, heaven, Champs-Élysées, bliss, So entering into charge radiance is a very electrical process of understanding some of this physics. And one last thing we had on the little sheet of minor notes for today's conversation. So we talked about perfect echo. We didn't talk about the dervish turn that last
The
Sufi.
Sufi dance,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
dance that we do. Yes.
Yeah, the last Sufi story for the day was, well, when the dervish student says to the master, "Look at me, I'm doing the rotation, the dervish spin, and I'm not getting dizzy. Therefore, I have pure intention." How does an electrician explain the physics? Well, the physics is quite simple. That as you enter the center of more and more compression, which is the lightning bolt, which is always rotation, the dervish turn, is that when your thoughts return to center recursively each time, to inhabit the center of rotation, the center of implosion, therefore the center of distribution, every wave has to implode into the phase discipline of that array, named Planck and fractality, called planckfire.com. Namely, that perfect distribution is called pure intention, meaning you have become shareable, meaning you can only, in your ideation, in your thoughts, stay at the center of that spin, that array, that dervish turn, if every single thought is about pure principle, pure intention. Every single thought is about perfect service to the array, to the divine. Whom does the grail serve? Itself.
Right. So if we have the perfect grail, we have the thoughts of love, because there's a lot of people that are very lost in the realm with their thoughts, thinking that, wow, I have a perfect heart, I love. Why is this not working out? Why are my manifestations not turning up? Why are certain balances not equaling out? So with these terms, when we talk about putting your finger right here, turning, having a love thought, people, we will have people in their childhood forms working out their childhood aggression right now. So those sequences are very important to pass on, because they will use them, and I want them to use them, and we need to translate them correctly. And I can be a first witness to understanding that when you perceive thought, like the thought of, I need to expand my body, I need my molecules to, I need my atoms in my whole body to control this, not it to be accident. It took me about a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then I started. It changed. We'll say that the first time it happened was within the first 6 days. I laid there trying to astrally project it. Nothing happened. And on the sixth day, I said, you know what? I'm gonna do this as long as I need to, so I don't fall asleep. So I laid there, and on the second hour, I said, you know what? I'm tired of this bullshit. My eyes started opening, so I wrapped a towel around my head. And at that moment, 2 hours go by, and I said, you know what? Fuck this shit. Excuse me for the language. And I pick up my hand, and I could see my hand, and I realized, oh shit, something's happening. Like my third eye, that's exactly what told me that shamans, why they locked themselves in the cave. I realized that from that moment. So right now, what I want people to realize is that there's nothing distant from you. It's all within you. It's all a part of an algorithm sequence that we are translating. So right now, whichever way you do it, wherever you get your information, there is a sequence and there is an algorithm to do.
Yeah, nice. And I'm reminded of from Russ's story of the classic story of the Kogi, where their mamas, their priests, when they're young, they're taught they spend X number, a large number of months in the perfectly pitch black cave. And then there is an explosion of growth. It's actually explosion of melatonin, and suddenly they become clairvoyant, actually. And as Russ is saying, there's a relationship to that inner darkness and your body flipping the switch that then your body can propagate into the longitudinal array, which means, as Russ said, you could astral project out of your body at a certain point where you inhabited the center of that darkness. So there are obvious rituals for these things, the rites of initiation, the rites of passage, or as they called it, the ancient art of resurrection, Freddie Silva. Can you do 3 days of near death? Then you're called a Templar. Well, and there is a sequence. In fact, our most favorite Gurdjieff sacred gymnastic was called joy, pride, awe, anger, pity, fear, and like experience the sequence. And later you learn there's a sequence of musical ratios. Anger is 1/7, joy is 1/6, love, lo-fi is 1/5, actually. So the musical geometry of emotions, as the geometry of touch, is very specific musical frequency ratios, elegant, powerful. goldenmean.info/touch. And you see the touch of the emotions from Manfred Klein's Centics, etc. So there are sequences. Beautiful. Yes, right on. So there was one last thing on our list from today, actually, Russ, one more thing, which was we have done, we're grateful that our videos lately have been so well received. It's fabulous. And one of the ones that, and a lot of that's thanks to Russ and asking the right question, but one of the ones we just did, Russ wasn't there, actually, was our wonderful friend Tony Rodriguez and I have done a major video series, which he is animating professionally to teach what it is to enter the array. This is actually the subject. And the last video in that series, which is already made public, it's called the prequel to the sequel, which was the follow-up Q&A. And that film had, like, I don't know, 4,000 or 5,000 views in a day or two. It's, kind of went viral. People loved it. Now, what did they love? And I just want to give one specific part of that story, which was after Tony survived an incredible secret space program abuse experience working with a Nazi Dark Fleet on Sirius Colony Cavalier. Tony is one of the most famous secret space program survivors, works with Elena Denon, and he's at the conference with Elena here in France today, which is where Valerie just went. But anywho, then Tony started a school for remote viewers. And Tony came to me kind of like, well, let's discuss the physics of the remote viewing, basically. And he gets it completely now about this access to the array. He gets it. He gets it. He's making wave mechanic models about what access to the array is because he absolutely gets it, which I think is wonderful. And let me give you an example. So Tony noticed with his school of remote viewers that if you start at an ancient obelisk, the remote viewing is better. And then he noticed that the obelisk is almost always X number of feet, always from the nearest major body of water. How come the distance from the obelisk to the water is always the same? And then he took out his Vogel crystal and focused on it, and phase conjugate up with, focused the Vogel crystal into the water, called the longitudinal projection, and suddenly fed the girlfriend was dying and gave her the water, and suddenly amazing healing. He says, the obelisk and the water, the longitudinal crystal and the water. And so he started to think about, oh, how is this array working? And then he asked me about the dynamics, and we started talking about plankfire.com and Elfie.link, which is the electrical wavelength and frequencies of the array embedding interfractality. Anyway, so Tony is getting it that actually when you implode into the array, and remember the conversation started with Jean-Charles Moyenne, we measured his brain waves, and sure enough, alpha, gamma, brainwave cascade, golden ratio octave, exactly tuned to plankfire.com. And suddenly, Jean-Charles Moyenne turns inside out, implodes, and teleports repeatedly with witnesses. And he when John Charles Moyen's imploding in his brain, he's very clear. He says just before he teleports, his right eye sees where he's been and his left eye sees where he's going, and he's aware of that. I mean, cross your eyes and think about that for a minute. The reason is because he's imploding literally in the center of that longitudinal vortex node, embedding in that longitudinal array, and then inhabiting the array. And so
let's
that's
let's let's leave that. Talking about teleportation and being able to have remote viewing on a queue, having that implosion technique, because certain people's minds, some people aren't trying to be finders, right? So or seekers. So they have these abilities, but they need to not be super enthused or stimulated by the vibrations we're giving. Those people have these abilities and they awaken a different type of clairvoyance or touch. There are people that are going to be teleporters and have these abilities. So we'll integrate that step by step for how to use it and where to connect it, because we already have the Lucid Dream team, we have the Discord channel, we have everything, and people aligned for this.
and the remote viewers
So
team, remote viewer team, the dream team, access to the array.
yeah, exactly. And this is exactly what we'll say even governments are trying to use, but without the right processing and the right availability, they're whatever. It's not even our deal. What we do is what we do. And so, with the help of AI and all these different types of availabilities and connections, which are lower vibrational, we respect them. We love them. We do not judge them. And it's going to happen either way. The most important thing is for us to achieve a higher vibrational state together. Everything else is not going to be in effect.
And
unless we wish.
And this can become very practical. So what we're saying is that the synapses in your brain are called an array of spark gaps, net of fireflies, Indra's net. And you inhabit that array. You are already inhabiting an array. There is no question. And when the sparks line up and make a tornado and implode, golden ratio brainwaves squeeze the vortex in that array to a point, and then you get peak perception and bliss, and you can see without your eyes, and you become longitudinally coherent, called clairvoyant, and you begin to see your ancestors. And suddenly, that process leads you to the electrical skill to inhabiting a larger array, called having a soul, called longitudinal coherence, called ability to lucid dream and see your ancestors. So it's not about the fact whether you're already in an array. It's very simple. But to inhabit a larger array, you need to make the leap. And if you're always living in an ugly metal building with dead air and electrosmog, you ain't going to make the leap, because the bigger array ain't available for you to embed in. Oops. Luke Skywalker, he found nature for the Jed. I mean, raising the Jed, the Egyptian Jed is plasma projection. The Jedi is plasma projection. They did it in nature. They ain't never, all of the thousands, many thousands of Indian saints who were measured and documented to be 1,000 years old. The Tibetans ain't never one of them did it in a metal building. Hell no. The array is not available for embedding there. Yes, whoever invented cities can apologize later. Meantime,
Meantime, that's the right way to look at it. Whoever fucked up, we love you too.
Yeah, we love that too. Absolutely. The word city in yogi, a city is a very specific ability to float. You get the cities, but that's a different kind of city. Anyway, so just by way of review, so we're grateful that so many people now are getting it, that the science of imploding and embedding to propagate into a coherent array is a beautiful, powerful, accurate, by equation, plonfire.com, physics of how to implosively compress. And that is the answer. Clairvoyance, lucid dreaming, getting a soul, implosion of bliss, the harmonics of brainwaves, the harmonics of sacrocranial. And it is a very literal, direct physics by equation answer to portals, stargates, teleporting. And it is a very specific, accurate answer to electrogravitics, propulsion, stargates, portals. It's all in understanding exactly what implosive compression is, the origin of all centripetal negentropic forces, perfected charge collapse, Planckfire.com. Enter the array.
We are the array.
We are the, that's right. I think that's our final Sufi koan for the day. You are the array. Exactly. Well, Russ, thank you. I think we had
Love
some.
you, Dan. Blessings. Until next time, Fractal University, we appreciate you, tribe, and one by one, step by step, day by day. We got it.
Blessings to all of you. Thanks for sharing. Be a shareable wave. Lo-fi. Thanks. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.